Okay, then as I was saying, we know that we should move from chemical control. However, it's usually highly effective. It usually doesn't need anticipation. It can be used as a last-minute option. In some cases, it's even curative. And basically, it's usually perceived as the cheapest alternative by growers. So it's very difficult to compete with chemical control. And in addition, modern insecticides are much more selective than before, and usually also are used at much lower doses than before. So it's very difficult, although we know that we have to move away from chemical control as much as possible. Alternative methods rarely meet all these characteristics. So although we need them urgently, there's a lot of problems to implement these methods. So basically, which are the methods that we could use, especially in a European scenario? Basically, we have some cultural practices like fruit bagging or the sanitation of the orchard. We have different types of biological control that we can use. And also we have the biotechnical control by using the soil insect technique or the traps baited usually with semiochemicals. I'm just going to talk a little bit about pros and cons of these methods. In some cases, they are really an alternative, but in many cases, there's problems of cost. And I think that we have to fight against this perception that chemical control is still considered as the cheapest and most effective method. The first type of control, cultural control, fruit bagging. This is a very selective method. It's highly effective. It even can enhance the quality of the fruit because you have better color and maybe enhanced flavors. So you can get higher prices for this fruit. It's environmentally sound, but it's labor intensive, so it has a lot of cost. So unless you can get higher profit from this fruit, probably you cannot practice it, and it's not always applicable. Another type of cultural control is the removal or destruction of infested fruit. The advantage is it's very effective. If it's performed adequately, it's environmentally sound. Importantly, it can be mechanized, at least partly, so this reduces the cost. But anyway, this is a cost, and growers usually don't like it because it's like the waste, what's left in the field. I have to invest some money for this. So in many cases, it's hard to convince growers that this is really a good option, something that they should do. If we move to biological control, we can apply conservation. And usually when we apply conservation, what we try to conserve is ground-dwelling predators, the ones that will feed on the mayfly when it pupates in the soil. So basically it's the management of the soil, the ground cover, and also we can use companion plants that can help on that. Some advantages: this is selective, it's effective, it's environmentally sound, and actually it may be extended to other pests because we are conserving this beneficial fauna, so we have increased functional diversity in our orchard, and we can affect these other populations. So you can fix more than one problem at once. However, this will make you incur in additional costs because you have to take care of these plants that you will have in your orchard. You have to water them, you have to apply fertilizers, make sure that they're not competing too much with your crop. And also another problem is that sometimes they may enhance populations of other potential pests. So it's critical to know which species you are introducing in your orchard to do the right choice. And this sometimes can have these two sides. So you have to be very careful about what you do. And sometimes we don't have this information. Another type of biological control that we can use is the non-additive biological control, usually with entomopathogenic fungi or entomopathogenic nematodes. The advantage is it can be very effective. Same as before, it may be extended to other co-occurring pests because usually, and this is a disadvantage of this method, is that sometimes you can have side effects of non-target organisms. And among these non-target organisms, we can have some beneficials. So again, we have to be very careful when we apply this type of technique. Another problem is that sometimes the doses required for control are too high. and this makes the cost of these techniques not practical for use. So we have to keep on working on this type of method or this type of natural enemies, because they could be a real alternative if we know how to use them correctly. And the third type of biological control that we can use and has been used in the past very often against fruit flies is classical biological control with the natural enemies which are exotic and are imported, reared and released in the area where the pest is a problem. The advantages of this method, if properly performed, is that it's selective, it is specific, and very important for growers, it's self-sustaining. So they don't have to invest on that, because once the natural enemy is established, it will breed and will establish and no problem to keep on working if we don't do nasty things to these natural enemies. Which are the disadvantages of this method? Well, there's a limited effectiveness. So far in Europe, I'm not aware of any natural enemy of fruit flies that has been successfully introduced and with high effectiveness. There's some environmental risks associated to the introduction of these natural enemies, because once you introduce it, if it establishes, it's irreversible. And there's also some legal constraints, like now we have the Convention on Biological Diversity and the Access and Benefit Sharing that limits the use of this type of biological controls, so are very limited. And at these days, it's preferable to work on indigenous natural enemies. So better to work on this inundative biological control with entomopathogenic fungi or nematodes, or the conservation of the natural enemies that we have in the orchard. The last type of methods that we could use as alternative to insecticides is biotechnical methods like the straw insect technique. Advantages: it's very specific, environmentally sound, and it's compatible with many other control methods, even with chemical control. If the releases are combined and you know what you are doing, and you can make them compatible. The disadvantage is it's quite expensive, so you need a lot of money to carry this type of programs, and usually these programs are sponsored by governmental agencies. Otherwise, it's very difficult to keep on these programs. And of course, it's an area-wide approach. You cannot. This is not an alternative for an individual grower. And the last method that I wanted to introduce is the traps, the semiochemical baited traps. The advantage is, even when using pesticides, the amount of applied insecticide is several orders of magnitude lower than in conventional pesticide use. So this is interesting, even if you have to use insecticides, and these insecticides are localized in the trap, so you make this application selective. However, even with this selectivity, you cannot avoid some side effects on non-target organisms. You have to service them periodically, which is an additional cost, and same as before, this is an area-wide approach. So you have to make sure that growers in a region are applying this method. So this is, well, again, this is just a summary of the methods, and I just wanted to highlight these methods that can be used. Some of them are being studied in our project, but I think that we have some food to think and to discuss, and how this could fit in our IPM